This show is for everyone working at the coalface. Digital, business, marketing, social. This is At the Coalface with your host, Jason Greenwood. Hello everybody, this is At the Coalface with Jason Greenwood, and just wanted to take a chance today to talk to you a little bit more about something that's near and dear to my heart, I suppose, especially since I've just left one job and started another, and I guess a bit of experience and background as to why I think this subject is actually so important. So it is a Saturday, so I do have the day off, but I felt the subject was so important that it did warrant, I guess, a special episode and a special point to talk about this. So what I want to talk about today is when you leave a job. What do you do? How do you handle it? How do you professionally not ruin your esteem, your respect in the industry, the respect amongst your colleagues, the respect amongst your bosses, your current employers, your future employers, etc. So this is actually so critical, and most people don't really pay a lot of attention to it. And I know they don't pay a lot of attention to it because I've seen such poor execution of leaving one job and entering another that's one of the reasons why I wanted to make this episode. I've seen a huge number of people, I guess, transit through the Exceed business when I was still there, and it was an interesting thing to watch as an outsider or as someone who had to deal with the aftermath of someone choosing to leave the business, do something else, and come into the business. I watched people transit into the business and transit out of the business. And it was a really, really interesting learning experience for me to witness this and witness how different personalities and different people handle that situation and that scenario. One of the things that I did notice is that there was an extreme level of disengagement very early on after someone turning their notice in. And this is something that's very common. It's not good, but it is, I guess, it's just the human condition, in the sense that once you've turned your notice in, you typically at that stage, you've got another job to go to. Not always, I suppose, but for most people, they don't turn in their notice at an existing job until they've got a sure thing in the bag, or until they're going to go and do their own business, or whatever the case may be. Until they know what they're doing, they don't cut off their nose to spite their face. They don't eliminate their income, because most people have a dependency on an income for the mortgage payment, car payments, family payments, kids, food, everything else. So they don't have the luxury typically of leaving a job until they've got something to jump to. Now that creates an interesting dichotomy where once you know you're going somewhere else and you're actually looking forward to that, and it's human, right? It's natural when you're looking forward to going into a new role, a new position. It's natural for your brain to make that instant switch to where you are thinking about that job, you're thinking about the new role, you're maybe even a little bit nervous about it, you're wanting to do a good job at your new role, you're wanting to impress people, you're wanting to impress your new boss, you've told family and friends that you're changing jobs. There's a lot of psychology in behind changing roles, changing positions, and obviously there's a strategy behind it for many people too. They're often advancing their career, they're taking that next stepping stone that they think is either going to bring them more money, maybe more attention, more position, more mana, and whatever else that they're looking for out of their career and their work life. Maybe something that's a little less stressful, whatever the case may be. They've got different goals and different motivations for changing jobs, but whatever those motivations are, they're often quite strategic, unless they've been made redundant or unless they've been fired, in which case they didn't really have much choice to change job. But in most cases, people do have a choice. They've changed jobs willingly, and they're making that jump for a very specific reason, and it's all those reasons that their brain and their heart are occupied with once they turn in their notice at their current job. So that's the premise, or I guess the context that I'm taking this discussion from, is someone who's turned in their notice, who has a notice period to work through with their current employer, Some employers choose to allow employees to leave immediately so that they don't poison the well, so to speak, so that they don't pour poison in other employees' ears and be a distraction and perhaps cause a mass defection of staff to either that place where that one employee is going to, or just leaving the business full stop for whatever reason. So there's often a situation where you do have to work out a legal notice period. Most businesses don't allow you to leave straight away because they need you to hand over your role. They need you to hand over your skills as best as possible. They need you to hand over that internal IP that you've built up over the time of being employed by that employer to either a new staff member, a colleague, maybe someone who's going to replace you, perhaps to your boss, whatever the case may be. There's tends to be a little bit of a handover process, a handover period, a period of documenting what it is that you do, how you do it, unless there's already very, process-driven systems in place around your role. Oftentimes there's a lot of special knowledge that you've gained over the time that you've worked with that employer. Especially in digital, we see it a lot where someone has that special knowledge of the customer. They've got a special knowledge of what they do. They've got a special way in which they do it that allows them to be successful and allows the business to be successful that employs them. And as a result of that, there needs to be a very thorough handover process put in place around that. And that allows a handover of that unique client information, that IP, that internal knowledge to be effectively transitioned to someone else in the business. And also the knowledge of your processes, your systems, your technology, and anything else that is unique to your business. And every business should have things that are unique to it. So, and the longer that you're with a company, the longer the handover period or the more complex the handover tends to be. So, my advice, my strong advice would be to handle it with grace, handle it with respect, handle it with empathy for both your boss, even if you didn't like your boss and maybe that's the reason that you've left the company or you've turned in notice to the company that you're leaving. That doesn't matter. The point is it's a very small, whatever vertical you operate in, I can guarantee you it's much smaller than what you think it is. There are people in that industry that will talk about you positively or negatively based on how you end up and leave the position that you're in today. So always be aware that there's long-term ramifications. There are long-term ramifications to the way in which you choose to exit the role that you're in today. I've seen it done really well and I've seen it done really poorly. Not to break myself, patting myself on the back, but when I left Exceed, I tried to be as absolutely thorough as I possibly could be in the handover of my knowledge back to the business. Very thoroughly documented my role, very thoroughly documented the clients that I was dealing with, the unique characteristics of those clients, the key contacts within those clients. I was very careful to make sure that I handed over contact details of internal resources that we used, developers, etc. I made sure that I documented everything that I could possibly think of, both from a day-to-day management perspective, a day-to-day role management and implementation perspective, but also more strategically where I saw and learned over time how different players within the business fit in with my role and liaised with my role and vice versa, and how that impacted my ability to do my role and the dependencies within the business for everybody to be able to do their jobs well. And so I'm not saying that I'm the greatest, but I certainly took great care in trying to document it. It was about 2 weeks solid working, a couple of hours a day on this every single day. And I shot screencasts of accessing certain technologies and systems we used inside, the processes we used for things like monitoring systems and our project management system, our internal intranet system that we use to communicate with customers, all the various different systems, time tracking, etc. So I tried to be as absolutely thorough as I could in terms of trying to document what it is that I did on a day-to-day basis and how I did it to hopefully provide a good base for whoever was coming after me to take over from. Now, they're always going to have their own unique way of doing things. They're going to bring their own unique skills and abilities to the table. And the reality is you can't bottle or you can't document everything that you do, because there is a uniqueness about what you do that makes you you, and you brought hopefully unique value to the business that you were working for. And certainly if you didn't, you either probably wouldn't have gotten hired, or you wouldn't have stayed there very long, or you wouldn't have felt like you were of any value to that business, and you probably would have moved on anyway. So I'm not trying to say or pretend that you can document the personality. You can't document who you are. You can't blueprint who you are. You can't bottle it and leave it behind for the other person to take a sniff of your essence and become you. That's not what I'm saying. But what they can do is they can start from a much better place of understanding operationally how you do what you do, business as usual operations, and making sure that they have that continuity of service, or can extend that continuity of service either to your bosses, to your clients, whatever role that you might play, whether it's customer facing or purely internal. Either way, you will be able to know better than anyone else at that point of your departure how you do what you do, and the tricks of the trade, so to speak, that allow you to be very productive and allow you to add value to whatever role you're in. So those are the things that I would suggest really require documenting and really require high attention to detail. So what I did is I used Confluence, which is part of the Atlassian stack, but it's just a documentation. It's like an internal intranet system. And I simply started documenting effectively for my particular role, because I was so heavily customer facing, but I also played a key role internally in the business as well, managing systems and processes inside Forexceed. I effectively had to create two different tables of information. One is, how do I hand over the clients that I've been dealing with effectively, but also how do I hand over those internal roles and responsibilities effectively as well. So there was two components to that. And as I said, I created a lot of, I guess, screencasts where I was able to literally step-by-step walk through certain aspects of my role and certain ways in which I handled certain tasks that made me more efficient after 5 years of doing it, or nearly 5 years of doing it, that made me more efficient at doing them in that way through trial and error and honing my craft over that time. And so that was the way that I approached it. Now, should you approach it that way, you might not be comfortable making a screencast where they're following your mouse and screen clicks and you're talking about what you're doing as you're doing it. You might not be comfortable shooting a video like this. You might not be comfortable doing anything other than writing a document, a single Word document or a Google document, and trying to just bullet point some of the things that you do. But whatever you do, try to have respect for the person that comes after you. Try to have respect and empathy for the colleagues that you leave behind, having to try to fill the gaps that you leave behind. Have empathy for your bosses who have employed you and paid you for however long they've paid you and employed you, and have some appreciation and respect for that. And just really do it with a tremendous amount of empathy and I guess self-awareness of the impact that you are going to make just by your departure, because it will have, no matter what you think, the impact will be greater than what you think it is. And I've had to take handovers historically from other employees who I've had to take over from and take over certain responsibilities from, who haven't left very well. They haven't left a thorough handover process or document. We've had maybe literally a 5 or a 10 minute meeting. They've verbally told me a few things, and then they've effectively left the building. And I can tell you from experience that that's very painful. That there's a lot of reinvention of the wheel as a result of that. There's a lot of wasted time, energy, and resource, and there's a lack of continuity within the business and externally with clients, customers, whatever the case may be, because every business has customers typically, otherwise they won't be in business. So there's a deeper impact, a wider impact than perhaps what you could ever imagine. And I've been on the receiving end of some very good handovers from some excellent employees that really understood the impact of their role in the business and externally, and had a great appreciation for that, and a great appreciation for me as the person who had to maybe take over some of those responsibilities. And I've had just the opposite. Like I said, I've had the flip side of the coin, where there's been totally no respect, no appreciation, no understanding of the people that are being left behind. And as a result of that, we've all kind of had to start from scratch in trying to recreate that position within the business, that skill set within the business, and it's very, very challenging. So that would be my advice. Be authentic, be genuine. You've spent however much time you spent there, whether it's 6 months or 6 years or 16 years in a job. The reality is that it's your responsibility. Don't think it's going to be the boss's responsibility. Don't think it's going to be the owner's responsibility to tell you how to do a handover of what you know and what's uniquely stored in your brain. Don't expect someone else to take that responsibility just because you've turned in your notice. No, it's your responsibility to work as you mean to continue in your new role. It's your job to make sure that you effectively hand over what you know as best as you possibly can, with the best intent, with the best heart behind it. Well, nearly got hit by a car there, so let's not have an accident. That person didn't even indicate to pull out in front of me. Anyways, so it's your responsibility. So take it as such. Take it seriously. Take it with a tremendous amount of empathy and thanks and appreciation for the time that you've been there, and a thanks and appreciation for the colleagues that you've worked with, and for anybody who may be taking over your role. So that would be my advice. You know, I know it sounds serious, and it was maybe a little bit more serious of a discussion than maybe what I had initially intended. But that would be my advice, because, you know, the word will get out. If you don't do a good job of it, and you don't do it with empathy and care and concern, then that will get out, and it will get out into the community. It will get out into the vertical that you operate in. It'll get out into the circle of colleagues and the circle of influence that you play in, and it won't do anything good for your personal brand. It won't do anything good for your career if you don't do it right. So, but if you do it right, on the flip side, then that will be another feather in your cap. That will be another positive thing for people to say about you, is to say, yeah, this person may have left the business, but they didn't leave us in the lurch. They didn't leave us hanging. They did a fantastic job right up until the final day. I know at my final day at Exceed, right up until about 3 p.m., I was still continuing to document some things to make sure that I'd covered all the bases, that I did an effective handover and an effective transition within the business. And you know, I can walk away with and I did walk away with my head held high, because I knew I did the very, very best job that I could right up until the last day to make it as easy as possible for the business to transition me out of the business. So that would be my advice. Hope it works well for you. You got any questions, let me know. Thanks.